Hey everyone, my name is Edward Lynch, and today's presentation is on the seasons of growth and the growth mindset. My background is I'm a retired F-16 fighter pilot from the U.S. Air Force, and I'm also a sports psychology consultant with a Doctor of Education degree in sport and performance psychology. And today's briefing is going to be on the seasons of growth, which is a concept of the growth mindset that's not necessarily talked about very much in the discipline of sports. So with that, an overview for today's presentation. I'm going to talk about the growth mindset, the seasons of growth, and then some unusual aspects of growth, and then tie that in with character strengths. First of all, the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset needs to be understood before the rest of, before you can understand the seasons of growth. Dr. DeWitt out at Stanford University is an author of a book called Mindset, which is a great book, and I recommend any of you guys out there who are interested in reading more about the growth mindset, get this book. But it's about the psychology of success. And the growth mindset is compared to the fixed mindset. First of all, the growth mindset seeks, there are individuals who are seeking challenges, and they see setbacks and obstacles and other issues that may be presented before them as opportunity for growth, an opportunity to learn and to improve and to become better at what they're doing. On the other hand, the fixed mindset athlete or student or individual is going to see challenges and avoid them and try to find ways around them, to the easy way out. In other words, they give up when they're faced with obstacles. Their effort is fruitless or worth when they're faced with challenges. Sometimes for the fixed mindset, criticism is difficult for them to handle, whereas a growth mindset sees criticism as a way to learn how to do whatever skill or task that they're trying to get better at. So you can see already there's differences. This is a closer view of the two mindsets, and it's important to know that it's easy to kind of go in and out of both these mindsets, but the one who's more consistent on the growth side is going to outperform the one on the fixed side. And this is in academic settings as well as in sports settings or business settings or any other aspect of life. But the mindset book really hones in on education and how a person who is told that, hey, you're so smart, whereas the one who's in the dumb kid class is told, hey man, you made a great effort on that project, you should keep working at it. Over time, the one with the growth mindset who's working at it is going to outperform the one who has said, hey, you're smart, because they believe that's part of their makeup and that they're fixed and they can't grow or become any better. That's who they are as a person. So when you criticize them, you're attacking their self-esteem. Whereas the growth mindset person is not going to see that as an attack on their self-esteem, because they already embrace and understand themselves to a degree where that criticism is not going to be like a hurtful feeling. If anything, the criticism is seen as, man, this is good, solid information that I can use to push forward, versus seeing it as an obstacle and trying to avoid it. A better way of looking at this in a more simplistic terms would be two different Christmas trees. You got an artificial tree on the left and a real Christmas tree on the right. They look beautiful. They're both great. Let's just say that the live one is still in the ground, okay? not in your living room, because obviously it's going to die. And that would make my analogy pretty worthless. But if you have an artificial tree, every time you pull it out of the closet and plug it in, it's going to work generally. That's to say, in a perfect world. And you know, the stand's already built in. You're not out there having to get the chainsaw out. It's just a lot more simple. It's the easy way out, so to speak. There's no smell to it. So if someone has an allergy, you don't have to worry about that. I mean, there's some advantages to an artificial tree, but over time, it's going to fade, it's going to wear out, and you're going to throw it out anyway. And you probably save money in the long run. Okay, so that's some of the pros and cons to the artificial tree. But that's to say that I get out and cut some of the limbs off where they're not going to grow back. Whereas a real tree that's growing out in the wilderness is planted in good soil. It's getting nutrients from the earth, from from the soil. It's getting water, sunshine. It's growing. If I go out there and prune it, it's going to grow back even stronger and probably more branches. So pruning hurts. If someone is yelling at you or correcting you, it hurts. But in the long run, that pruning is going to make you grow stronger. And over time, the real tree on the right is going to get bigger. There's no doubt about it. Whereas the artificial tree is not, it's just fixed. So that's, in a very simplistic form, the difference between the two. Now I want to talk about the controllables, because that's one of those trite kind of words that you hear a lot. You know, control the controllables. Yeah, that's easier said than done. But let's hone in on really what is a controllable. Basically, all you have control over is your attitude, your effort, and your focus. But let's talk a little bit about attitude right now. Your attitude with a growth mindset needs to be a committed one with intentions, not good intentions, which, yeah, good intentions are great, but you have to be intentional, which means there's some action going on, and with a relentless drive with a good mix of the right motivation. So on a continuum, you have the intrinsic motivation, which is your passion. You're doing it for yourself and how it's meeting your goals and how it makes you feel to get out there and compete. And it's just, you value that as part of who you are. Whereas extrinsic, on the other end of motivation, is you're getting rewarded, you're getting money, you're getting a scholarship or something like that. So yes, both sides are important, and there's different levels in between, but you need to have a good mix to where you're recruiting the motivation, like you do muscle recruitment, where you got to recruit the right mix of motivation to get the job done and to get the results that match your outcome goals. Okay, and we'll get into more about goals in a moment. But if you're truly committed, then there'll be evidence of your drive, I say. And you'll see this relentless and determined person out there that's got the right mix of motivation. And it's reflected in your effort. So effort's that second part that you can control. And I believe that effort means that you have a written plan of action with processes that detail exactly what you're doing, with performance milestones along the way toward an outcome. The outcome is the scoreboard or winning the championship, but it's not what you're focused on in the moment. In the moment, you're focused on the process to get the job done, and then you're measuring how you're doing your process with performance milestones. And so and then you got to track those performance milestones and how you're doing with them. And if you're not getting the results you want, then you need to be making changes. And you get where I'm going with that. And that's really at the heart of goal setting. But if you're out there making an effort, but you don't have a plan of action, then you're just basically wandering, And as I said a while ago, on my slide, it says that you're wandering until your thoughts are converted into action with the results. Okay. And then focus. You have control over your focus, and you need to be, focused on the process, but in the right season. Okay. And that's going to lead me into the seasons of growth for the growth mindset. And I want you to think long term, because in the long term, that's really where it's at. I mean, short term comes and goes, but the long term is going to be there. So you're going to have a lot more, you're going to have mountaintops you're going over, then you're back down to the valleys. And you're going to have a lot of great moments at the mountaintop, which are short-lived, and then you're going to head toward a valley. So you're always headed from or to a valley, so to speak. But for the seasons, basically they don't coincide with the physical season. They could, but not necessarily. We're talking about personal growth or growth as an athlete or coach or teacher. Okay. It could be a form of periodization like you have in strength and conditioning. And you need to understand that when you do have setbacks and obstacles, it could yield a bigger harvest in the long run. And it also keeps you true to the process to where you don't get intoxicated with your own success and become disillusionized. And I believe that there's a lot of athletes out there who used the right formula and mix of sports psychology and became so good that they became their own god, and that basically ended their whole career. I mean, you see it all the time in politicians and businessmen and even athletes. They become so good, and I'm not going to give any examples here, but they become so good that they become their own god, and then they just believe everyone should worship them, and that they, they're the thing. Okay. And it's short-lived. So you've got to be humble, especially as a teammate. And there's perfect and so many examples of these athletes who are like that. And probably the one coach that I love the most is Coach John Wooden, the late Coach John Wooden, who coached at UCLA. For many years, he won 10 national championships in basketball, Division I. He's the only coach that's ever done that. He is who I look to read. I mean, over here on my bookcase, I've got like every John Wooden book. Okay. And I've got his Pyramid of Success hanging right over my desk. And I highly recommend that you look at the Pyramid of Success, and I'll refer to it again during this briefing, but it's important to know that a lot of what I'm saying is coming from that pyramid. And there's a lot of great athletes and others around the world who have used that pyramid for gaining a lot of success. But like I said, you got to be able to use that and not get to the point that you're, thinking that you're the one, because there's many. And Coach John Wooden loved Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It was one of his top players, but he would not let him set records, because he believed that individuals set records, but teams win championships. So the seasons of growth, yeah, you can have personal growth and you can have team growth as well. But regardless of the season, there's no easy season. It's not like you're going to enter one season and you hit the winter and then you hit the spring and then everything's going to be just flowing smoothly during the summer. Every season has its moments. Okay. Unrealistic expectations. I mean, you got to be real about things too. I mean, right now with the pandemic going on, it's a reminder how we're very vulnerable, and that the season we're in right now is one that we did anticipate. And the slowdowns, the setbacks, there's obstacles, mistakes, and errors, and these mishaps, the social stigmas going on. With how you're doing your 6 foot or your mask or whatever it may be. There's a lot of unrest right now, and that's a slowdown for the whole world right now. But at the beginning of the season, it's like a freight train. If you can get that big, heavy train moving, then that momentum is going to carry you. Yeah, it starts out slow, but then, you know, once you get that train moving along, then it's a easier thing that once you get things set in motion. As I said a while ago, things happen over long terms. This is the stock market from 1982 till present day. And you can see how things have changed quite a bit. And there's been continuous growth in the long term, but in the short term, as you can see, there were a lot of valleys and setbacks. So this is just another way of looking at growth in the long term. So let's go to the seasons. The winter season, it's cold, snowy, not a lot of growing going on, but there's still things alive out there in the ground. Okay, the farmer knows that, but it's not the time to plant the seeds. It's not time to harvest, obviously, but it is time to get some rest. It is time to fix the tractor, repair that roof on the barn, fix the grain elevator. There's a lot of things that you put off during the year and you wait till the winter to fix them. Okay. This is the time when you want to be doing your sports psychology training. This is right now, while we're not doing a lot of sports, this is the time for you to become strong physically, mentally, and spiritually. Okay. This is our winter season right now. And this is the time you can plan. You can reflect on the good times, savor the past. And yeah, you got to have a past to reflect on. So that's important. So reflect. It's time to refine. It's time to plan and anticipate what you're going to do for the year. Actually, not anticipate, but put it on paper. Exactly what we're going to do. But anticipate obstacles along the way and already have contingency plans already built into your planning, so that you're not having to jump through hoops at the last minute. And did our plans last year really generate the results that we had intended for them? My computer is saying low on battery, so I better hurry up this briefing. The winter is also the time that the farmer prunes, and I saw, as I showed you a while ago with the Christmas trees, you know, it hurts to be pruned, okay? But remember that the winter is part of the process, and you have to trust the process, and the winter is not an obstacle. It's not something you go around. You have to have these winter times. Okay, the spring, that's when everything comes to life. You know, you're putting your seeds out, things are getting watered and so forth. And got this sun, the fertilizer, all that happens, okay? I also like to say that we're always planting seeds throughout life. And it might take 30 years before those seeds come to life and they're sprouted. Okay, so don't ever forget to continuously plant seeds. And I like to say that they're relational. Relationships are the foundation. John Wooden's Pyramid of Success, they're the foundation of a good sports program and the foundation for much of anything to do with success, because you can't do it alone. You can't be your own God. The summer is when you get the most growth. It's made up of all the routine tasks, but there's a lot of work. There's a lot of pulling the weeds, and because if you don't, it's going to choke out the plants. And so you got to maintain the focus, and you also got to be patient and not try to harvest too soon. You want to delay that gratification. And so if you believe in the process, then you'll continue making the effort with the right blend of motivation. The fall, this is when we see the fruits of our labor. This is when we also get feedback on how our processes did. And then we can make adjustments during the winter on our plan for the next season. The sigmoid curve is not talked about in sports psychology, but I'm going to bring it up here. It's used a lot in the business world. But there's a learning phase, which is going downhill if you look onto the left side. And then there's the growth phase. And before you peak out at the top of the growth, you can see that there's a new curve that's started here, okay? And that's a hard thing to do because everything's going good here, so why do we need to be making changes? Well, if you don't make this change, then you're going to have this decline phase, and then you're off the other end, okay? And then you're into a long, deep valley. But if you make this change early, before you peak out, yes, you'll have a small valley, but then you'll grow even higher level than you did before. And again, you'll start another sigmoid curve here. So that's the thing during the harvest, is that you can't have a continuous harvest. And if you think so, then you're going to go off this deep end. But if you see that, okay, we've done really well, things are going great, it's time to enter the winter, make some plans and changes and get things going. Yeah, we're going to have a slight decline, but man, we're going to have a great spring and summer and harvest of the next year. Okay. So that's how that curve can kind of work in our favor for the growth mindset. I'm going to talk a little bit about some fertilizer, because that's what kind of stimulates growth and keeps things going. But you know, you got to have confidence in failing. As a rock climber, if I'm not confident that the person below me is going to, if I can't trust him, I'm not going to be able to climb at my full effort. If I'm bouldering and I know that if I fall and I miss the pad, then I'm not going to have confidence that I can, you know, fall and not get hurt. So if I know that if I'm going to fall and not get hurt, then I'm going to be able to push harder and stretch myself. Okay. And, you know, we got to manage our risk, but we got to be willing to push the edge as well. Otherwise, we're just going to kind of be stuck there. And I like to say there's no adventure if there's no risk. There has to be a little bit of risk there. Risk physically or mentally and spiritually, or just in your long-term ability to stay in that sport. And then there has to be team growth. When you have a group size of 3, that's like the best size of a team to get a task done. And then the group of 6 is best for a social kind of function. I just thought that was interesting to throw in there, but that's from a research on growth on a group context. There's also non-seasonal growth. You know, like I said, you know, you could throw a seed out there and 30 years later it sprouts. And it's like, whoa, it's not in the current season, growing season, but hey, I'm in my winter season, but I got something growing over here. So, you know, sometimes it just takes maturity. Sometimes it needs the right environment, the right nutrients, the right words said to that person. It creates the right mix of motivation. And next thing you know, that seed sprouted and it's on its way to growth. Okay. So you have to be patient with those seeds that you plant in just, you know, unique locations. You know, you could have multiple seasons going on as well. Multiple seasons being that I'm in my winter for this sport, but I'm in the summer over here on another thing that I'm doing that's helping me develop to become a better person that's going to impact the current sport that I'm in. So you can have multiple seasons going on for different kinds of goals. So remember that. Okay. What if there's no growth realized? It's time to take a good self-assessment of yourself. And that's where knowing what your character strengths are can help you through this. Okay, that's part of that self-assessment. If you know what your character strengths are, then you're going to be able to use those to your advantage, especially if you hone in on your top 5 character strengths. But if you're fixed-minded, you're just going to you're probably going to quit at whatever you're working on. Anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide since I'm running out of battery power, and this is a rehearsal brief anyway. I just want to mention soil. The soil has to be good. If you throw seeds in bad soil, you're not going to get the growth that you could have had. Okay. And I believe that John Wooden's pyramid of success down here at the bottom is all about the 3 blocks in the middle are about relationships, friendship, loyalty, and cooperation. And the cornerstones are hard work and planning and enthusiasm. Okay. And I believe your character strengths are mixed in there to provide the mortar for that structure as well as the foundation. So I like to promote the VIA Character Institute. It's the values in action is what VIA stands for. And every one of us has 24 character strengths. There's no weakness in strength, but your top 5 strengths are what you can use to supercharge your attitude and your effort and your focus for the growth mindset. It's a good starting point, and it's a form of mindfulness to understand yourself. Okay, and like I said, the signature strengths are your top 5. Your lower strengths doesn't necessarily mean it's a weakness, because there's no weakness in strength. It just means they're unrealized or underdeveloped. Doesn't mean that you need to work on those, but it is an option. But if you align your talents, character strengths, and resources and interests all together, it's a power zone. You can take this, just Google VIA character strengths, and you'll come up with this character strengths test, and it takes 15 minutes or so to take it. And the last thing I want to talk about is GRIT. It's an acronym that I like to use as a reminder and an easy way to retrieve information. But G for GRIT is goal setting. The process is the key, as I talked about earlier. And then regulation, self-regulation. And that doesn't mean to do deep relaxation breathing all the time, but it does mean to understand that mindfulness breathing is a way to train your brain to focus. But also remember that you can use deep breathing to reduce excess tension, not necessarily become totally relaxed on the basketball court or the football field or whatever sport you're doing, but sometimes you also need energetic breathing as well. So that's a form of self-generation or self-regulation. Then I is for imagery, and that's for doing like mental rehearsals of the process or seeing yourself being successful in the future. But that mental rehearsal is real important. Talk, positive in nature. Some of it may sound negative, like get your ass in gear. Could be a positive way of saying something with a negative tone, but it is your constant thoughts, and you have to be loud so you can be heard. Okay. I'll go on more of that tomorrow when I do this briefing for real, which will be recorded. So lastly, goal setting, you create it, you own it, you control it. And regulation, you got to breathe it, you got to live it, you got to control it. And imagery, you got to see it, you got to feel it, smell it, taste it, use all 5 senses and control it. And talk, you got to think it, you got to say it, you got to believe, and you got to trust it, and you got to control it. Okay. And last thing, focus is a choice. It's one of the most important aspects of sports psychology. So that is my take on the growth mindset and character strengths. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope this briefing helps you to become a better person and a better player. Thank you very much.